A good few months back, I was admitted to the hospital following some severe damage to my anal canal. What the doctors didn't know at the time, however, was that these tears weren't caused by natural means. Rather, they formed during a self-inflicted torture regime, also known as playing through every Greek God of War game on God mode.
Please, someone make it stop, please.
The good news is that I've fully recovered, meaning it's only right that I finish what I started, all in the hopes of answering one final question.
What the fuck was that? Oh, for fuck's sake. Bro, fuck off! Oh, just piss off.
As I've done with every video in this format, I've noted down and recorded every death I experienced while hobbling through these games, and using them, we'll be able to determine which of these games is truly the hardest to complete on God mode. For some clarity, these playthroughs were the first time I'd ever touched the Norse God of War games. You can almost imagine my surprise then when I realized I could jump straight into Give Me God of War difficulty from the get-go. See, in previous games, the developers were kind enough to provide lube in the form of a warm-up playthrough, locking the hardest difficulty away until you'd seen what the games had to offer. Here, however, we're given the option to bend over without any lube and take it straight up the ass. Now, I wouldn't say they recommended playing the game like this. In fact, we're given numerous warnings when selecting this difficulty, as once selected, there's no way to change it. Given the importance of the question at hand, however, I pushed through these warning signs, only to immediately regret doing so when I watched the almighty God of War require 5 whole axe swings to bring down a goddamn tree.
Okay, we are cooked.
Concerns aside, we're joined by this little runt, who we'll soon learn is the most annoying little shit ever.
Yeah! We're sick of hearing about little people's little problems!
Holy fuck, the irony. Oh, my brain fucking hurts.
Following the first of many rowing sections, we incinerate our wife and watch in horror as our son can't even tank a bit of heat. Unwilling to accept the fact that our son's a pussy, we task him with hunting down a deer while we provide him the perfect directions.
Which way?
In the direction of deer.
What?
While our son did all the hard work, we made sure to ransack any chests we came across, as another man's treasure could also be ours. Apparently, our wife taught Atreus how to hunt, although it soon became clear that she hadn't taught him how to jump.
This way, boy.
Wait, what do you mean, oh? Oh, we're so fucked, he doesn't know how to jump.
As worrisome as this fact was, we had bigger concerns as we're ambushed by our first set of Draugrs. Now, on any other difficulty, this encounter would act as a harmless introduction to the combat system, but considering I got my ass whooped on the opening screen of the original God of War when I attempted this shit, I knew for a fact that I had to immediately lock in. Now, to my surprise, these Draugr enemies weren't all that challenging. Sure, they seemed a bit beefy, but we managed to clear out this first horde simply by rolling all of their attacks. We're also equipped with a shield, although at this point, I had no idea that parries existed. Before long, we stumbled across a crossroads, which only incentivized us to go in the opposite direction of wherever Atreus moved. Doing so unveiled our very first Nornir chest, said to contain the fruits of the gods. Legend states that these apples work in a similar way to Viagra, in that consuming them on a frequent basis does just enough to increase the length of our our health bar. Unfortunately, one apple wasn't nearly enough to jumpstart this life-changing effect, a notion we were immediately reminded of as we're mauled to death by some wolves.
Oh, fuck me. Oh, shit, I'm dying to fucking wolves. It's over, isn't it?
Unlike the Draugrs, these wolves felt far more aggressive and rapid with their attacks. Another important aspect to mention is our enemy's ability to level up, something these wolves do almost immediately. This not only heals a portion of their health, but it makes them tougher and less prone to us staggering them. The good news is that regardless of their level, our shield was able to block all of their attacks, meaning I could play like an absolute pussy and shield camp to their eventual demise. What wasn't apparent at the time, however, was the fact that we were about to encounter our toughest foe yet, barricades.
Bro, what? Are you telling me the God of War can't fucking vault this?
From here, we stumbled across the local rehab group, and despite their hostile nature, it wasn't all bad as we accidentally learnt how to parry in the ensuing fight. As you'd expect though, my timing was anything but consistent on these parries this early on. Even so, this new discovery served us well, and before long, we'd caught up to the deer that we'd started tracking 5 business days ago, only to be reminded that our son is still a pussy who can't finish what he started.
I can't.
Yeah, alright, give me that shit.
Before we're able to correct this ungodly behavior, we're interrupted by what seemed to be the game's first boss, and considering I lasted about as long as I do in bed against him, I would hazard a guess that's exactly what he was. Doherty here isn't exactly a challenging boss, but the difficulty we're playing on made it seem like we were hitting him with a toothpick, whereas his attacks mimic the feeling of tanking a nuclear missile straight to the forehead. Considering we could tank about 2 hits before seeing the respawn screen, we had to play this fight rather methodically. This meant no more being greedy for extra hits in the hopes of staggering him, as we essentially had to make sure we dodged all of his slow-moving attacks. This was actually easier done than said, as we found ourselves snapping this hunk's neck not long after. Any semblance of confidence following this fight, however, was quickly obliterated, as I realized that at most, these trolls were like some mini-bosses.
Wait, what? No way, there's like 18 more of these fucking things.
With our hunting trip concluded, we wanted nothing more than to return home, although considering we were being bum-rushed by more Draugrs, as well as these axe-resistant guys, I'd say the universe wanted us to do anything but return home. Even after returning home, we're given about 3.2 seconds to catch our breath before being interrupted by the local drunk. Now, I have no idea what they're putting in the alcohol here, but it seemed to give this guy some semblance of godly power, as he shot off shockwaves of ice across the battlefield. As far as first boss fights go, the stranger here is a superb one. Not only does it feature multiple phases, but it introduces different facets of Kratos' arsenal, like the Spartan Rage ability, which we use to beat the shit out of this random homeless man. Even with our elite tier boxing skills and a massive ass boulder, it seems nothing we do can hurt this guy, and before we knew it, we were entering into a third phase. It's here where he learns a few more tricks and also marks the first time we died to him. By this point, however, we'd been fighting this dumbass for what felt like a few millennia, meaning we knew exactly how to avoid or parry all of his attacks. Fearful of the onslaught of drunks that supposedly now have access to our home, we had no choice but to leave. The question then became, where exactly are we supposed to go? That's when it hit us. We're built for one thing and one thing only, scaling to the peak of every realm. We'd already scaled Mount Olympus, so what's stopping us from reaching the highest peak in the Nordic lands? Ignoring the fact that the answer is literally everything to ever exist, we embarked on what we knew was going to be a challenging adventure. Doubly so considering we had some leech attached to our backs the entire time. To make things more manageable, we finally decided to engage in the RPG aspects of the game as we unlocked our first set of abilities. Our arsenal was further improved as we came across our first legendary chest, which just so happened to hold our very first light runic attack. Unlocking and upgrading these special abilities was going to be instrumental if we were to have any chance of completing this game on this difficulty, and nothing made that more clear than this Draugr pit, which was most definitely our biggest roadblock yet. What makes this infamous gauntlet so goddamn challenging is the sheer number of enemies we're expected to take out. We not only have to deal with an onslaught of regular Draugrs, we're constantly being bombarded from up top by these fire-bending assholes as the ground units constantly level up. To make matters worse, the moving cancer cells known as heavy Draugrs also decided that this would be the best time to make their grand appearance. Not only are their attacks strong enough to stagger us should we mistime our parries, they're able to grab our son, making him even more useless than he already is. Pair them with even more regular Draugr, and you've got one of the most rage-inducing sections I've ever experienced this early on into a game. Whether I was getting railed in the corner or in plain view, every death pushed a metaphorical dagger deeper into my chest. By the time we'd conquered this pit of hell, I knew I'd never struggle against these particular enemy types ever again.
2 seconds later.
Wait, what the fuck? Wait, I can't block that attack? Oh, come on, I just spent 4 years fighting these guys.
Yeah, so apparently when enemies are higher level than you, their old parryable attacks now become unblockable, which just felt like a massive fuck you considering what we'd just been through. Even so, I was determined to reach this chest as I knew there would be something insane in there.
Oh man, you gotta be fucking kidding me.
With my mental state teetering on the edge of severe depression, I looked to incorporate our own cheap tactics. This saw us spam throwing our axe around corners, which strangely enough seemed to work extremely well. Safe to say, I abused the shit out of this tactic the moment I found anything remotely challenging.
Holy fucking shit, what is this clusterfuck of enemies? This shit sucks. Oh, I might just start axe throwing again, I can't lie.
Following this, we shred our way through some peasants before abusing our fatherly authority to force Atreus to do our bidding despite the fact that he very obviously shit his pants.
Why is he walking like that?
Eventually, we stumbled across the first person to not want us dead. In fact, I'd go so far as to say that Brock here was our very first ally. Assuming we have the materials, we're able to upgrade our weapons and purchase armor at his shop. These upgrades also extend to our son, and while it's hard to believe, his upgrades are some of the best. See, when paired with his skills, Atreus becomes extremely effective at holding enemy aggro and displacing them, two aspects that will make our lives a lot easier in the long run. Other upgrades we looked out for were these Nornir chests, this one in particular holding our first horn of Bloodmead. Like the Viagra apples, these horns are filled with liquor so strong, the consistent consumption of it will only make us more of a raging alcoholic. Despite the copious amounts of upgrades we just assembled, the fact of the matter was, we were always 2 hits away from dying. Brenner offers a more challenging fight than his planar counterpart, mainly due to his ability to throw molten shit in our face. Aside from that, he's also joined by these bald fuckers, although I have no idea why they're all focusing on us, as I swear we watched Brenner obliterate a few of these idiots during his entrance. Either way, we were able to whittle down his health and finish him off with a flurry of punches on our second attempt. Defeating him rewards us with our third Viagra apple, and following a significant extension to our health, we turn towards hunting our dinner. Unbeknownst to us, however, this boar belonged to the Witch of the Forest, and considering we'd just shot an arrow up his ass, she implored us to help her heal him. Fortunately, helping her in this moment was the right decision, as upon completion, she imbues a seal onto us, meaning we'd never have to visit a toilet ever again. That's about all we can do here in the Witch's Cave, as we don't yet possess the equipment that would interact with the large majority of the objects down here. Alas, we row our way out onto the Lake of Nine, a massive, lake that acts as the centerpiece for the 9 connecting towers. After hours of rowing, it became clear that we had no idea what the fuck we were doing, and in a last-ditch effort to awaken something, we decided to throw our axe at nothing.
I'm in danger!
As intimidating as this massive serpent was, the bigger concern was the putrid odor protruding from its mouth. Thankfully, we managed to bargain for our lives by promising him a mountain-sized tub of toothpaste. The problem then became how in the fuck we'd ever amass such a large amount. Our first idea saw us ascending up one of the massive towers, only to summon the scariest motherfuckers known to man. If their skull purple health bars weren't obvious enough, we had absolutely no chance against these enemies given our current loadout.
Holy shit, I'm just getting fisted wherever I go.
Despite getting our shit kicked in by a single hit, this death didn't deter us from exploring other nearby shores, and while they were still challenging in their own right, the rewards earned by completing them seemed all too worth it. The main problem we were dealing with this early on was the fact that every second enemy we came across was very clearly a higher level than us. This not only made them huge damage sponges, but it also allowed them to pack our ass into a coffin in record time. With enough ass kickings to last a lifetime, we instead looked to reunite with Brock, who hands us a mysterious crystal used to access mystic gateways. These gateways act as the game's fast travel, although the crystal we've been handed might as well be covered in shit, as it only works one way.
But it's only one way. Straight back here and nowhere else.
Bro, what the fuck is the point of that then? Disappointed, we bought a few upgrades before making our way towards the highest peak in the realm. It was around this point that Atreus finally decided to be useful. 4 hours into the game. Honestly, these advanced combat options meant fuck all in the moment, as we were blasted to smithereens by these self-destructing assholes. Not only that, these scumbags had been chewing on the devil's lettuce, as they had been given the god-given ability to heal their entire health bar. Alas, we pushed through this group of enemies, Cheese killed our first worm, and stumbled across yet another dwarf. This dwarf was a straight up coward, and one look at us has him promising to upgrade our axe anytime we run into him again. The more exciting discovery, however, was the resurrection stones, which basically let us get shafted twice by the same group of enemies. This incompetent dwarf somehow blew up the nearby lift, meaning we were forced to fight our way through countless shit-throwing enemies that love to predict our movements. Focusing on them, however, left our backs wide open to the burrowing worms whose only purpose seems to be jump scaring us. Safe to say, I was dreading the fights towards the top of the mountain if the ones at the base were this goddamn difficult. To my surprise, however, the higher up we got, the easier things became.
Fuck me, dude, I think I just blew myself up.
In all seriousness though, things went surprisingly well, and while a lot of this could be attributed to our upgrades, the addition of new enemies always posed a threat. Upon reaching the actual base of the mountain, we're stopped by the smoke protruding from the local steakhouse. Thankfully, Freya had been stalking us since we'd left her hut, and despite our initial concerns, she tells us the only way to remove this particular smoke was to replace the dogshit chef burning all the steaks up the mountain. Unfortunately, the only decent chefs left set up shop in a completely different realm. So back down the mountain we went, all the way back to the connecting temple and resulting in a chamber. Using the power of this massive USB, we're able to capture and transfer the energy of different realms, allowing us to travel to any realm we wish. Well, apart from this one. Alright, so apparently we can only go to Alfheim, which is fine, because that's exactly where all the calm chefs are anyway. See, what Frey had failed to mention was the fact that every able chef was currently being exterminated by the Dark Elf tribe, and seeing as we were trying to recruit one ourselves, it didn't surprise us when we were the next target in line. The Dark Elves as a whole were some of the most infuriating enemies we'd come across. They not only come equipped with both melee and ranged attacks, but their ability to break our guard before quickly rushing us was a lethal combination. Fortunately for us, Sindri worked in Alfheim on Tuesdays, meaning we could stop by for some much needed upgrades. From here, we stepped into yet another boat before coming to terms with the fact that we might as well be the god of rowing at this point. With that thought corrupting our son's mind, we made sure to move towards Sea Light, as it was said to cure any sickness. Fortunately for our death counter, we're not some dumb moths that are instantly drawn to the light. And instead, we look to explore the nearby shores in the hopes of finding some more upgrades, the most significant of which being more Viagra apples leading to yet another health extension. This health upgrade couldn't be more useless however, as we found ourselves being manhandled moments later by another group of rift enemies.
What's the point of these health upgrades? I'm still dying in 2 hits!
It was all worth it in the end though, as we picked up one of the best amulets we can grab this early on. Following this, we made our presence known by beating the shit out of the local armed civilians. Calling the population like this miraculously led us underneath the lake to an area known as the Temple Trench. Here we met with even more hordes of dark elves, most of which we dealt with by spamming our axe throws. Everything seemed to be going well until Atreus is kidnapped by these elves, leading us to rage out and slam the fuck out of these poor souls. Things would only go from bad to worse however, as the further we pushed into the temple, the more annoying the enemies would get. It was here where I learnt just how important it was to use the environment to our advantage, as for whatever reason, most of the enemies here die the moment they're smacked through certain terrain. Wait, did that guy just get eaten by the fucking plants? In certain areas, it was almost a necessity to use the ledges and shit as we were being assaulted by what felt like the whole ass tribe, only to then go and face the actual whole ass tribe moments later. Our actions saw us restore light to the realm as well as giving power back to the light elves. The only downside to doing all of this though was the fact that none of them knew how to cook, making our journey here a complete waste of time. Our struggles didn't end here however, as we're sucker punched by the Dark Elf King, Svartalfur. Yeah, I fucking nailed it, I bet. This asshole had somehow managed to harness all of the most annoying attacks from his loyal followers and combine them into one arsenal. I'm talking attacks that blind us, agile dodge moves that stop us from comboing him, as well as ranged projectiles that also blind us. Every movement he does also drops little turds on the ground that explode and blind us, making it extremely hard to get within range to deal any significant damage. Despite all that though, his attacks aren't the hardest to avoid, and pelting him with our axes from range seemed to work just as well as it did on any other enemy. Now considering we couldn't find a chef in Alfheim, we decided to explore a few of the surrounding shorelines in Midgard. Doing so led us to acquire yet another god tier talisman, as well as encounter our first dragon. As you can imagine, treading these fields filled with high level enemies that could instantly heal themselves all while avoiding the dragon's electricity blast didn't leave us in the most favourable of positions. Brain dead deaths aside, we made our way towards the Volundir mines, where we destroyed the inhabiting Soul Eater as well as found the last Muspelheim cipher. Completing this cipher allows us to travel to Muspelheim, which will be important later. With a few more favors completed, it was finally time to make our way back to the dodgy steakhouse. Upon arrival, we were pleasantly surprised to learn that the smoke could be dispelled by our strange USB, and before long, we found ourselves in yet another cavern. The only annoyance about traveling through such a cavern was the lack of any service, meaning our maps was essentially useless down here. Alas, we'd gotten some pretty overpowered upgrades by this point, meaning old annoyances like projectile-based enemies were no longer that much of a hassle. What was a hassle, however, was the appearance of yet another troll, although if we're being honest, the addition of these flaming draugrs was the real point of struggle during this fight, as we constantly have to shift our focus between the two enemies. Surprisingly though, he wasn't even the worst part of this ascension. See, after defeating him, we begin our ascent up the mountain using this makeshift lift, and in typical God of War fashion, every enemy within a 50-kilometer radius all collectively decided that now would be a great time to ambush us. These waves start cancers with multiple projectile throwing assholes and leaping heavy draugrs, and somehow get even worse when whole ass ogres somehow somehow fit their fat asses on this collapsing platform. I'm not sure there's a better term than clusterfuck to describe these fights, as I had no idea what the fuck was going on during them. This also has to be the most durable wooden platform in history, as it was still standing even after being shredded to pieces by a literal dragon. The resulting fight with said dragon was an interesting one, as I wouldn't necessarily call it difficult. It was more of a gimmick fight where we threw these electrified hand grenades into its mouth whenever it was looking to deep throat something. Most of my deaths during this fight occurred because I had no idea what attacks to look out for. For example, I spent a good few attempts weaving around his front leg, as I thought this was how you were supposed to damage him. This was dangerous as I had to constantly avoid his breath attacks, slams and lightning strikes, and as you can imagine, this got me killed multiple times.
Bro, what the fuck? How am I supposed to roll and block at the same? Oh, it's so AIDS.
In reality, you don't really need to do any of that brain dead shit, as you can simply walk back out the front and throw more grenades at him, leading to easy staggers and damage. Following its death, we perform some last minute dental work only to conclude that we have no idea what we're doing. Refusing to admit that we fucked up, we instead coat our son's bowstring with the electrical powers of the tooth, allowing us to somehow do this. From here, we acquired a few more upgrades, got fisted from behind, and made our way to the highest peak in all the realms.
The highest peak in all the realms is not here in Midgard. It's in Jotunheim.
Wait, what the fuck? What do you mean it's not here? What the fuck have we been doing all this time then? Mimir here tells us that he's the only one that'll get us what we need, so we slice off his head and make our way back to Freya in the hopes that she can revive him. To get back down the mountain, however, we got to use our very first instance of fast travel, which ironically enough is anything but fast. Where the fuck are we running through? I thought this was supposed to be fast travel. We clear out the local pest infestation outside Freya's house before making our way inside, where we're told to boil Mimir's head. I can only hazard a guess as to what Freya was cooking inside that pot, but it was clear to us that it was absolutely wank, as it somehow managed to bring Mimir's soul back from the dead. With the talking head now attached to our ass, we seeked out the massive serpent only to once again promise him something we couldn't acquire in the hopes of garnering his help. The good news is that the world serpent's brain size doesn't seem to be correlated to its overall size, as he agreed to help us with our quest. Following this, we're humbled by yet another rift before coming across the Council of Valkyries. As a heads up, these playthroughs will include each game's hardest boss, meaning we'll be returning to this area in due time. For now though, we rode our way over to Thamor's corpse, where we blasted some werewolves out of existence. The surrounding areas weren't too challenging to tread through, as we'd gotten used to the enemy variants and how to deal with them. Even the double ogre fight was surprisingly easy, as the moment you mount one of them, the rest of the arena is fucked. It also helped that Sindri was low-key irrelevant, to the point where he could sneak past literally any and everybody, as it meant we could upgrade our gear in the strangest places possible. Despite our constant upgrades though, the following sections were anything but easy. See, to reach the hammerhead, we had to engage in yet another elevator gauntlet, although this one had the added annoyance of a time limit. To make matters worse, we also ended up freeing the king of all trolls, said to have never lost a battle in his lifetime, a statistic we had to learn the hard way. What makes Frostbeard here harder than his other troll counterparts, aside from the pack of wolves, is his ranged eyes attacks, which happen to slow our movements should they hit us. As a famous man once said though, if you can't beat 'em, join 'em. Any celebrations at winning this fight, however, were almost immediately quelled, as moments later we were getting shredded to pieces in the corner. Holy fuck, bro, I can't fucking move. Holy shit, what the fuck is going on? Apparently the wolvers outside were just the baby versions of these fierce creatures, as these ones were absolutely relentless to the point where you can hardly breathe without one of these assholes jumping your ass. The climb of torture doesn't end here, however, as at the very top await Magni and Modi, the brothers of the drunken stranger we'd encountered at the start of the game. This marks our very first double boss battle, and while these are rather hit or miss, I didn't actually mind this one. Yes, the camera is a bit of an issue at times, but most of my deaths came purely due to my own incompetence. This fight also had the added challenge of having to phase each of them at roughly the same time. Take too long and the brother you knock down will charge back up and rejoin the fight. This is significantly harder in the final phase, as they cover for each other quite well and also gain new combo attacks that essentially one-hit us. Through sheer will and determination though, we were able to lodge our axe straight into Magni's forehead. With them out of the way, we're able to grab the magic chisel, which we can use to open up these crystallized doors. These doors often lead to hidden chambers of Odin, which we came across back at the base of Thamor's corpse. These chambers contain the corrupted Valkyries, which we'll need to defeat to summon the ultimate boss of this game. This particular chamber contained the easiest of these Valkyries, meaning I got my shit absolutely kicked in.
Wait, what?
In all seriousness though, Gungnir here has like 3 attacks, all of which are easy enough to parry or dodge, resulting in a rather lackluster boss fight, all things considered. With our new chisel, we're able to break into Tyr's vault, although considering Modi was already lying in wait, it begs the question why we needed the chisel in the first place. Atreus tries to activate Spartan Rage, only to end up knocking himself out, meaning it was once again up to us to carry the weight of this entire family. Unfortunately, it seems Atreus popped one too many blood vessels, and even with Freya's help, we'd need the Heart of Hell's Gatekeeper. Let's be honest though, it wouldn't be a God of War game without a trip to Hell, although this Hell is slightly different from the fiery one we're used to. In fact, this Hell is so cold that our Leviathan axe is useless, calling for a trip back home where we pick up our old trusty friends. The Blades of Chaos do slightly less damage than the axe, but they make mowing down large groups of enemies a complete breeze as they offer an immense amount of AoE damage. This makes travelling through Hell almost too easy as we're able to stagger and juggle multiple enemies at once. Before long, we're interrupting the Gatekeeper's workday, and would you look at that, it's another goddamn troll. Did they not have any ideas for bosses, or given he's an important figure in the underworld, Mituga has his fair share of complex attacks, allowing him to teleport throughout the arena and drop off soul bombs that seek us out. The most annoying aspect of this fight, however, is the moment he calls upon the dead, as their presence not only sucks our focus away from his teleporting arse, but their attacks are delayed to a point where avoiding damage seems almost impossible. Even so, our son's health was low-key important, meaning we didn't have time to waste here. Surprisingly, his heart not only acts as a cure, but imbues our blades with the winds of hell, meaning we can siphon energy from these sources and use them to open these doors. Unfortunately, this ability is essentially useless in combat, meaning we were still getting obliterated from every conceivable angle.
Oh my assness needs to be studied, honestly.
With the Gatekeeper's heart in hand, we return to Freya's hut, and while her mysterious soup seemed to bring Atreus back, it also came with the stipulation that he now knew he was a god, a discovery that turned him into a colossal asshole.
But we're gods. We can do whatever we want.
Oh, scary! Oh, shiver my timbers! Shut up, man!
Before any of that though, we found ourselves in yet another hidden chamber, this one containing the Valkyrie Kara. Unlike Gungnir though, Kara had the ability to summon minions to aid her, and this paired with her relentless attacks made her a pill I wasn't willing to swallow this early on.
Holy shit, I might have to come back to this one. I'm doing like fucking P damage to her and I'm getting my shit absolutely rolled. Fuck.
With the feeling of failure looming over us, we returned to the Lake of Night, where we completed a few more favors on the bordering shorelines as well as unlocked a few more chests. With our arsenal upgraded once again, we returned to Tyr's vault, which felt far more like a labyrinth considering it was laced with booby traps. These traps came in the form of spinning blades, whole ass orgies, and more goddamn trolls, although this duo fight required us to switch between our 2 weapon types as each troll was only susceptible to damage from one particular source. While this made the fight more challenging in nature, it didn't present a monstrous task as the trolls themselves were fairly squishy. The defeat marked our chance to get the hell out of here, and while the vault itself was rather lackluster, we did manage to steal some vintage grog from its chambers. With one final set of upgrades completed, it was finally time to return to the fake summit, which saw us fighting off hordes of Draugr for the billionth time. Along the way, we got distracted by yet another hidden chamber, although this time it only took a handful of deaths to realize that we just weren't built for this kind of fight at our current level.
Fuck me, yeah, I'm just not built for this. I'm getting fucking destroyed. Holy shit.
The rest of the ascent saw us defeating every enemy from fierce ogres to frost ancients, although none of them proved to be too much of an obstacle. Upon reaching the peak, we downed the rest of Tyr's vintage grog, inebriating us to the point of being able to see the path to Jotunheim. Before we're able to walk through it though, we're rudely interrupted by an actual drunk, who we stupidly slam dunked into the only known passageway to Jotunheim. With the game's runtime cleverly extended and our value amplified, we're thrown into a cutscene disguised as a boss fight as we beat the shit out of Baldur on his very own dragon. This beatdown continues into Helheim, where we claw at Baldur to let go of our son as we once again crash land in Helheim. Our goal then became to escape hell for what feels like the 100th time, and boy did it require an awful lot of bullshit. The initial areas weren't too challenging, and we even got to experience Baldur's mummy issues along the way.
Do it! Come on!
By the time we got to the flying boat, however, we were well and truly in over our heads. Having to keep these fires alight while dealing with Hell's undead army proved to be far tougher than I originally hoped. We couldn't go 2 seconds without some new shit popping up. It was by far the most chaotic this game had been so far. If it meant escaping hell, however, we knew we had to push through, and push through we did as we found ourselves crash landing in yet another one of Odin's secret chambers. These chambers contained a hidden lift that took us back to the center chamber, which we used to return to Brock's workshop. To our surprise, these two dwarven brothers had pushed past the fact that one of them had stolen the other's wife, and together they were able to craft us Tyr's key, the centerpiece required to reach Jotunheim. Using our new key, we're able to unlock the doors to Tyr's hidden chambers. Tyr's trickery didn't end here though, as we fight our way through more waves of enemies in the hopes of flipping the whole goddamn temple. No, I'm being serious.
What? What?
Flipping the temple spawned the world's rarest egg, which was said to come from Jotunheim, and using it we're able to travel between the realms to Jotunheim Tower, where we need to fight through some admittedly challenging gauntlets once more. Eventually though, we defeated our 17th troll of the game before rowing headfirst into the serpent's mouth. See, Mimir had apparently offered the world serpent a crater-sized cheesecake, and when he couldn't deliver on his promise, he had to trade his eye for it. Fortunately for him, the serpent agreed to let us collect his eye as long as we got him that cheesecake instead. Ignoring the fact that we couldn't provide him any sort of cake, let alone one the size of a crater, we quickly picked up Mimir's eye only to be spewed out by the serpent's mouth, no thanks to Balder once again. Despite Frey's wishes to leave him alone, we weren't the type to forgive people who waste our time, thus beginning the final showdown with Balder. This multi-phase fight with Balder is arguably one of the easiest in the entire game. The fight has so many cutscene interruptions that we're essentially granted a full heal every few minutes or so. Of all his phases though, I'd say his fireform phase is the hardest, mainly due to the constant spawning of these flame minions. The fact that we don't have to start the fight from the very beginning, however, takes a lot of the pressure off, leading to a far more relaxing experience as we slowly whittle down Balder's health bar. His last phase sees him playing leapfrog while changing between his fire and ice forms, although none of his attacks really pose too much of a problem, as we'd seen them about 1000 times now. The fight ends with us snapping Balder's neck, and while Freya cursed us to hell, we couldn't care less as we had a peak to reach. Upon arriving in Jotunheim, we're led to believe that these dead giants somehow predicted our entire journey.
All these drawings. This is our story.
As unbelievable as this was, we didn't come here to learn about prophecy. We came here to mark our territory and prove that we still had what it takes to reach the highest of peaks no matter the realm. Completing the game on this difficulty awards us with some nice shields as well as a little homage in the form of a chapter completion pop-up. Descending from this peak marks the end of the base game, or at least I assume so considering we're ambushed by the credits. With that said, our adventure doesn't end here. See, I came into this video with the sole purpose of defeating the game's hardest bosses, and in this case, that requires us to defeat the whole lineup of corrupted Valkyries. This was easier said than done, however, as the last 2 Valkyries we'd attempted pretty much shoved a jackhammer up our ass and let it rip. To defeat these monstrous creatures, and more so the game's hidden final boss, we'll need to significantly upgrade our gear. This meant we had to travel to Muspelheim and Niflheim as they offered endgame content and equipment. Our first stop saw us taking on the Muspelheim trials, as they not only offered valuable resources, but also contained one of the 9 Valkyries we had to defeat. To reach this Valkyrie, however, we had to complete 10 trials, which ranged from laughably easy to downright infuriating. Bro, are you fucking serious? I'm coming out of a fucking parry. How is that allowed to hit me? I can't do anything in that situation. What the fuck? To help with the later trials, we also paid a quick visit to Ivaldi's workshop in Niflheim. This maze acts as the ultimate farming ground for high-end gear, and as such is no walk in the park, especially when the enemies here can kill us in a matter of swings. At this early stage, we could barely clear out the opening room without dying. Dying in the maze results in us losing everything we've collected so far in the run, and with the constant damage from the mist surrounding us, we had no choice but to incorporate a rather pathetic strategy. This strategy saw us clearing out the first room and surrounding hallways before returning to the central chamber, as this acts as a safe zone in which we can safely reap the mist echoes and alloy we've collected so far. This wasn't a foolproof method by any means, and we certainly died a good handful of times, but it did allow us to purchase a set of Vivaldi armor, which was a significant upgrade for us. Even with this armor, however, the last few trials in Muspelheim truly pushed us to the limit. The 100 enemy gauntlet was tough enough, but the one I struggled with most tasked us with defeating 20 enemies without taking a single hit of damage. What makes this challenge so hard is the placements of the enemies themselves. These arseholes really come at you from every angle, making sucker punches from behind the main reason why you'd ever get hit, although there were a few moments where I'd just get hit by the dumbest stuff. Fuck me, why did I roll that way? As rage-inducing as this trial was, we did conquer it in due time, meaning we could finally free the Valkyrie locked away in this realm.
I swear I kicked her ass,
Gondal is definitely one of the harder Valkyries we've encountered so far, as she has an immense amount of attacks at her arsenal, most of which we've never seen before. It's a good thing her arena is massive, as a few of her attacks leave AoE firings on the ground, cutting off certain areas. I died so many times here that I'd learnt how to weapon swap to maximize runic attacks between the blades and the axe by the time we defeated her. The Valkyries to follow weren't nearly as hard, as we'd significantly outleveled them by this point. The only other Valkyries to give us any trouble were Girdeful and Olrun. Girdeful was tough due to her countless unblockable attacks, most of which I'd never seen before. Pair this with a grab attack that essentially one-hits us and has a terrible hitbox, and you've got a fight that took us numerous attempts to master. Olrun, on the other hand, caught me off guard with how quick some of her attacks were. Her Valhalla jump in particular killed me more times than any other attack, although once we'd gotten the timing down, she went down all the same. The goddamn Niflheim maze killed me more times than Hilda did.
What, huh? Wait, no, I'm not even off the platform. What am I dying to?
And Rota didn't exactly impress me with her constant dive bombing. With them taken care of though, we locked in our final upgrades before returning to the Council of Valkyries for one final challenge. Unlike every other Valkyrie, Sigrun here gets the jump on us, meaning we can't exactly abuse any of our runic attacks to start off the fight. Her damage is also, well, immense, meaning we could tank a maximum of 2 hits at any given point. My first attempt went about as well as you'd expect, as did my second, and third, and fourth. Honestly, you'd think we were being made into a schnitzel with the amount of pounding we were receiving.
Oh, fuck off! I can't even fucking speak, I'm so tilted.
The fight against Sigrun is a pure adrenaline rush. She combines all the attacks from the previous Valkyries and turns them into one-hitting machines, meaning you essentially have to play perfectly to have any chance of defeating her. As brutal as these attempts were, it got to the point where I'd completely memorized how to deal with every single attack she had. We just had to make sure we could focus for an extended period of time, which did start to wear on me as I watched myself fail towards the end over and over again. Aw, bro, I'm fucking dead, aren't I? Why did I fucking parry this shit? Fuck, I was so fucking close! Alas, our persistence and dedication paid off as we finally managed to wear her down and defeat her.
Come on. Yes! No, let me get me. Yes! Fuck off, give me that fucking wing.
After 2.5 hours of constant attempts, we had finally freed the Valkyrie Queen herself, putting an end to our journey once and for all. Ah, fuck. In the end, we perished 158 times, 30 of those being to Sigrun herself. This places it amongst the hardest games we've ever completed on this channel, which doesn't give me much confidence going into its sequel.
Ragnarok, like its predecessor, also warns us about taking on its hardest difficulty, stating that once it starts, we can't exactly run from it. Little did they know that running was the last thing we'll be doing as we start the game sitting.
Boo, you suck!
It seems slaying Baldur and freeing the Valkyries didn't exactly do much to appease our grim situation, as we're now living out of a cave and relying on the medium-sized Atreus to bring us food. If I didn't know any better, I'd assumed the sun itself was good friends with Baldur, and following his death just decided to fuck off for large periods of the year, because what in the actual fuck is going on with all this snow? In reality, we were currently experiencing Fimbulwinter, the seemingly never-ending winter said to rapidly speed up the development of adolescence. I guess that explains Atreus' deeper voice and god-awful haircut.
What the hell is even that?
The other problem that's followed us since 2018 is the fact that Freya now hates our guts and has spent the last 3 years hopelessly trying to kill us. Thankfully we were able to shake her off, although things were about to get even worse as we witnessed what may be one of the saddest deaths in the entire God of War franchise. This moment of sadness lasted but a second as we had to listen to Atreus' constant complaining.
My story doesn't end hiding in these woods. I should be out there, finding out who I am, who Loki is.
You're not that guy, pal. Trust me. You're not that guy. Okay.
Atreus wasn't the only one going through things, however, as we too dreamt of simpler times with our late wife, although this too had the unfortunate consequence of exposing our kinks.
Good boy.
Even it's been a weird. These.
By the time we wake up, we learn that Atreus has gone missing, although tracking him would have to wait, as it was going to take us a while to understand this new UI. Bro, what the fuck? Why is this shit so confusing? Why don't they just keep the one from the first game? As you'd expect, journeying out into the wildwoods came with its own dangers. These dangers took the form of a few raiders whose sudden appearance marked our first real bit of combat. Throughout this fight, I noticed 2 things. Firstly, it seems the freezing temperatures of Fimbulwinter had somehow made us forget all of our attacks and abilities from the first game. Not that it really matters, because I also noticed that these earlier enemies aren't nearly as tanky as the Draugrs were in 2018 on Give Me God of War difficulty. These raiders in particular were extremely easy to juggle and stunlock into oblivion, which made the earlier sections of this game far more straightforward when compared to its brutal counterpart. With that said, enemies still have the irritating ability to level up mid-fight, which again makes them harder to stagger. Now, that isn't to say we haven't gained new abilities of our own, as we finally figured out how to use our 200kg body made of pure muscle to its maximum potential. Unfortunately, ledge slams weren't going to be much help in our very first boss battle against this random bear. I figured this was more of a tutorial boss designed to help players distinguish between parryable attacks and unblockable ones, yet I still seem to struggle against this beast. My inability to time these parries caused us to die for the first time. Fuck! Okay, so now we're just dying to random animals in the forest. Sick. What? Did I even play the first game? Although surprisingly, we respawned to find the bear on half health. This paired with us finally knowing how to avoid his attacks made the rest of the fight a relatively easy one. Watching the God of War get his ass mauled by some random bear was surprising enough, but not as surprising as finding out that this bear was in fact Atreus, meaning we'd low-key engaged in some severe domestic abuse. The good news is that Atreus seems to remember none of it, meaning we could return home while pretending everything was completely fine. As if karma itself was haunting us though, we got another 3.2 seconds of rest before shit hit the ceiling. Literally. Fortunately for us, the visitor this time around wasn't just any drunk. It was one of the most famous drunks to walk these lands. He's then joined by the All-Father himself, who essentially invites himself in and then starts waffling about world peace as if he thinks we're going to waste the $100 we paid on this game by doing absolutely nothing. Thor on the other hand knew exactly what we wanted, a good old fight. He then spent the whole fight trying to hug us, which honestly was rather disappointing. Thor, hearing of our disappointment, quickly bodies us during his third phase, only to bring us out of our own death screen in what may be the godliest thing I've seen any character ever do.
Oh no. I say when we're done.
Wait, what? Did he just fucking bring us back to life out of our own respawn screen? Wait, that's fucking sick. The remainder of the fight was quite straightforward, as Thor's attacks were surprisingly sluggish and easy to avoid. One last punch to the face and Thor knew he wanted none of this smoke and he promptly fucked off. Returning to the lodge, we're surprised to see Atreus is still around, although again, one thing became clear. Our home was no longer safe. Before stepping out into the hellscape known as the property market, we made sure to grab our blades as well as equipped our first bit of gear. It's after this that Atreus tells us he has something to show us, and for the first time in our lives, we for whatever reason decide to trust him in leading us. This trust lasted less than 5 minutes as we became the newest member of an all raiders gangbang. The only positive to come out of this whole situation was knowing that the Blades of Chaos still shredded the fuck out of multiple enemies at once. Along the way, we made sure to look out for branching pathways, as they more often than not contained good loot. Wait, what the fuck just happened? I can't lie, this random enemy was kicking my ass, as their attacks pretty much one-shotted us. Holy shit, is this a god in disguise or some shit? Why am I getting fucking one hit? Thankfully, I managed to get her stuck here, leading to an easy kill, only to realize that this whole detour was a complete waste of time.
Am I a joke to you?
There was no time to be depressed, however, as we were getting assaulted by every conceivable creature. The Huntress, however, didn't exactly have the facilities to be a menacing enemy, as their attacks were all fairly telegraphed and they didn't exactly do much damage. The other thing we noticed during this fight was the fact that our fall from before had somehow shattered our shield, meaning we couldn't exactly parry her attacks. Even so, we had more than enough godly power to beat the shit out of this hunter, earning us our first runic attack as well as our first frozen flame. Continuing on, we came across some ruins, which gave us the perfect opportunity to flex our new blade skills. Atreus, wanting nothing more than to one-up us, shows off his newly acquired power, which essentially boils down to turning paintings into full-on feature-length films. Knowing we'd just been mogged, we had no choice but to entertain our son's delusions surrounding Tyr and how he may still be alive. Regardless of all if this was true or not, our main priority still revolved around finding a new home, a task with which Sindri seemed all too happy to help with. Holy fuck, how does this guy have this fucking house? Upon entering Sindri's house, Atreus gets some much needed humbling.
He's too damn tall now. And he looks like that.
Because we're in need for some rather particular upgrades. Ragnarok takes resource collection and upgrading gear to another level, as we're now able to craft and upgrade shields. Alongside this, we also made sure to upgrade our Leviathan axe as well as craft some new armor. The conversations to follow highlighted Atreus' wishes to find Tyr, and while we were adamant we could get by on our own, not everyone is capable of defying their own fate. To reach Tyr's supposed location, however, we needed access to Svartalheim, otherwise known as the Land of the Midgets, and the only way to get there was to blind Mimir.
Shine this light in your eyes.
Cindy, you stinking bastard!
The resulting flashbang somehow left these inscriptions on every mystic gateway, and using them we'll be able to access all 9 realms in due time. For now though, we were off to Svartalheim, where we once again touched bases with our true calling. For fuck's sake man, not more rowing. Svartalheim introduces a lot of things, namely our first Nornir chest, as well as the munted cousins of the Ninja Turtles. I have to say, the parry window on some of these attacks felt rather strange, almost as if the enemies themselves were delaying their swipes on purpose. Alas, we managed to survive this early onslaught only to get ripped to pieces by the very next one. It honestly felt like missing a single perfect parry would immediately result in our death, as these enemies were quite relentless. With our death count well and truly seasoned, we stumbled across our first legendary chest, dealt with a few more reptiles, and finally docked at what might as well be a complete ghost town. Apparently the locals aren't too friendly to anyone over 4 foot, meaning our only point of contact in this town was unfortunately Sindri. Thankfully, he provides Atreus with a crucial upgrade to his bowstring, allowing us to obliterate objects that are randomly covered in this green shit. Since we were here, we upgraded some of our gear before sneaking into the dwarven houses to steal all of their hard-earned money. If the Lake of Nine has taught us anything though, it was that exploring these shorelines was our best bet if we wanted to lock down some early upgrades. The difference this time around, however, was the fact that we could actually hold our own, as we weren't pitted against enemies 5 levels above us. The most trouble we had when exploring these smaller islands was this encounter with the Hateful. His attacks not only apply a devastating burn effect, they also take away our whole health bar with every hit. Pair this with his extremely aggressive attacks and you've got a fight that we barely survived. Seeing as though we were well and truly stuck in the exploring mindset, we thought it best to clear out these oil rigs, which as you'd expect, were all heavily guarded by these reptilian bastards. Even so, it acted as the perfect sandbox to help us further understand the copious amounts of attacking options at our disposal. Our deathless streak ended soon after, however, as we came across what seemed to be the mother of these little freak shows. Defeating her was crucial, however, as the chest she was guarding contained the watchtower key. Placing this key in its socket revealed a rather lackluster sight, as all that remained in front of us was some beaten down drum. Hitting it, on the other hand, revealed a rather spectacular sight.
So that's the voice I heard.
I'd hoped it would have escaped by now, but...
With dinner in our sight, we made our way over to the chained creature, although upon closer inspection, this thing had far more rock than edible meat. With our stomachs grumbling and our dinner plans scratched, we thought it best to at least explore this mysterious creature in the hopes that it housed some food. What we got instead, however, was a clusterfuck of overpowered enemies that really shouldn't be on this thing in the first place, considering we'd just watched it rise out of the bay's depths.
Bro, why's everything got a purple health bar again? Fuck.
By some miracle, we managed to punch our way through this horde of overleveled enemies, and while we didn't necessarily find food, we did obtain our first shield attachment. As thanks, we decided to free this poor bastard, only to learn that it was chained up as part of some sick BDSM roleplay. Wanting nothing to do with this, we instead decided to return to the main story, although upon meeting Derlin, it appears that this wasn't the correct choice either.
What is it?
A fine. Hygiene code violation for improper transport of a rotting head. 2 demerits for speaking the All-Father's given name, and, for fucking up my desk!
Come on now, dawg. Come on, man.
Seeing as we were left to our own devices, we continued to push towards the mountain, where we came across a rather peculiar gravestone. As I did in 2018, we'll be taking on the Berserkers and their king later on, but for now, we had a train to catch. The top of this mountain contained many surprises, the first one being this Dreki, who honestly wasn't that hard to defeat. Continuing up the mountain saw us constantly being ambushed by enemies, although the wide array of environmental items definitely made things easier. Wait, holy fuck, that actually one-hit it. I should be using this shit more often.
Well, duh.
The next hour or so saw us beating the shit out of more Bergsra, taking a peaceful boat trip through the Apple Core and getting absolutely rinsed by yet another hateful enemy. This hateful was far tougher than the previous one we encountered, mainly due to the fact that it had its very own bodyguards. This paired with the tiny ass arena space and its ability to one-hit us made this a rather frustrating encounter. This frustration was then amplified as we're ambushed by a group of half-naked men. What wasn't apparent to us at the time, however, was that these enemies inflicted Bifrost, a damage type that we slowly recover from as long as we're not hit. Bifrost or not, however, these guys do an immense amount of damage, leading to us having to waste yet another resurrection stone. The good news is that Tyr was hidden behind this door all along, and while it was suspicious that he didn't necessarily have anyone guarding him, we were at least happy to have found him. What was surprising, however, was how timid and almost bitch-like he appeared to be, as he immediately ran away upon us finding him. Catching up to him, we mocked to the high heavens before learning that he'd given up being the god of war.
I don't know how to help you.
Well, that's great. This guy's fucking useless. Realizing we'd just risked our lives freeing the one person who refuses to fight, we head back to Sindri's house where we complete a few more upgrades. In the meantime, it seems Atreus and Sindri have plans of their own, and before we knew it, we were being forced to play as him. As you'd expect, Atreus' gameplay revolves around playing like a complete pussy, keeping enemies at bay with your bow and blasting them until their stun bar builds up for easy kills. Should an enemy get their hands on you, you're looking at a one-way ticket to the death screen, because this kid can tank a whole 2 hits before dying. Honestly, I got so bored of firing this bow that I just ended up playing him like Kratos, although these bow hits don't feel nearly as therapeutic, especially when it gets me killed in nanoseconds. Hating aside, I find his dodges can be quite cinematic if they're timed to perfection. Holy, okay, that was pretty fucking cool. As cool as these dolphin dives were, I didn't exactly want to spend much longer playing as Atreus, so we baited a few more Draugr to their demise before returning to the Council of Valkyries where we found Freya. As expected, she wasn't too happy to see us, even more so when she discovered that we wear the same arrows that killed her son like some kind of trophy. We thought mentioning Tyr would help get through to her, yet all it seemed to do was piss her off even more, and with one last warning,
"Leave this place. Go and do not return."
We were back to square one. We joined the rest of the gang back at Sindri's house for one of the worst dinners we've ever consumed. In the hopes of distracting themselves from the taste, the members of the council started cooking up some ideas on how we'd get more information surrounding Ragnarok. Tyr seems to think these answers lie in Alfheim, so that's where we headed next. The last time we were here, we were searching for a chef. This time, however, we learned almost immediately that none of these light elves have ever seen a kitchen, and their blade skills stem from the fact that they're goddamn samurai. They're also the first enemy type to spam blocks, which directly amplifies the amount of shield bashes we'll be using throughout this playthrough. For the most part though, these initial light elves were easy enough to take out. Moving on into the temple, we're tasked with using these crystals as a means of deflecting our axe, and I've got to say, some of the puzzles located here were extremely fun to figure out. What wasn't fun was getting railed from every conceivable angle. Bro, where did I even get hit from? What the fuck? The further in we delved, the tougher the elves became. Soon we were dealing with two-handed swords masters whose attacks seemed to have this ethereal glide pattern that I couldn't block to save my life. They were then paired with ranged elves that shot out projectiles that either moved slowly and one-shotted us, or quickly and four-shot us. If I wasn't dying to them, I was getting eviscerated by nightmares whose only purpose seemed to be flashbanging us. Eventually, we reached another one of the giant's prophecy boards, this one entailing the demise of Odin and the destruction of Asgard. Despite the good news, Tyr seems to be visibly concerned. I wonder why. Either way, with this newfound confidence, we started making our way out of the temple, knocking light elves off these cliffs along the way. Considering we'd cut the light elf population in half, the queen wasn't going to let us leave without a fight, although calling this encounter a fight would be rather disingenuous, as we beat her on our very first attempt. This isn't to say the fight wasn't extremely tense though, as we barely managed to dodge and parry her lightning fast attacks. Hearing of their queen's deaths didn't exactly sit well with the remaining light elves, who made it their sole mission to dogpile us into oblivion. With the power of respawns, however, we eventually made it to Sindri, who had somehow set up shop despite the ongoing war between the elves. Following another Leviathan axe upgrade, we decided to take a rest from the main story and instead look to explore the Barrens. Now, exploring might be a bit of a stretch, considering we can't see jack shit with the sandstorm obscuring our view. Even so, we managed to suplex our first Dark Elf Lord, open a few more Nornir chests, and obtain some rather sweet armor. Our main goal, however, revolved around clearing up this goddamn sandstorm. To do this, we'd need to climb our way through some underground caverns until we got to the root cause of the Radiant Jellyfish's capture. Following a masterclass in axe trajectory, we make our way back above ground where we can finally free this jellyfish and clear up the storm. With a long day's work behind us, we returned home to a nice warm meal from Tyr. Unfortunately, Atreus thought this was a safe space to speak, and with all this talk about prophecy and Loki, we knew our main character's status was in jeopardy. In an attempt to keep this franchise afloat, we looked to remind Atreus of his place.
But what if Loki going to Ironwood is the only way that—
Atreus. My son. And nothing more.
Although that didn't seem to work either. Our words pretty much gave Atreus such a strong identity crisis that he started having visions where he was offing himself. Miraculously, however, upon waking up, he was in the mystical land of Ironwood, the worst area in the entire game. I guess it makes sense that you have to kill yourself to reach this place, because I can't think of a more hellish place. Not long after waking, we meet with a young woman who immediately shatters Atreus' self-confidence.
You look weirder than I imagined.
That's probably the only good part of this entire section. The dopamine rush experienced by Atreus at the mere possibility of a friendship with the opposite gender awakens a ton of his latent skills, which does make his combat sections feel a bit more fleshed out. The only problem though is that the large majority of this chapter is riding around the swamplands on this yak. The only time I died in this entire section was when I got stun-locked by some slithery bastards. Eventually we reach Angraboda's grandmother's kitchen, and considering she's at the age where she's not supposed to be talking to boys, we're forced to sneak out the back. Atreus, being the animal lover that he is though, couldn't help but free the captive wolf. This ultimately gets us caught, thus beginning a rather interesting boss battle. Knowing that Atreus would stand no chance against most bosses, the developers instead made this a rather gimmicky fight where we deal damage to Gorilla by shooting her favourite cooking pot. She's not exactly a challenging fight, but I did get my ass blasted once because, well, I don't know, I just fucking did. Either way, we destroyed her favourite pot on our very next attempt, sending her into a deep depression which only angered her more.
I see you again! You wish you died with your parents!
As heartbreaking as those words were, we were just happy to get home, although even here we weren't exactly safe. Clearing these assholes out led to an even bigger one, that being our own father. Before our ass got fully chewed out, however, we're ambushed by a mysterious Valkyrie. Of all the Valkyries we fought, however, she's by far the easiest one, as most of her attacks are blockable. Towards the end of the fight, Kratos realizes that the ass we've been kicking belongs to Freya. After saving her from this terrifying bear, for fuck's sake, that's just Atreus again, she agrees to work with us, if it means freeing her soul from this realm. To do so, we'll need to head to Vanaheim, a completely new realm covered in self-destructing pus plants. Before long, we met with a man who looked eerily similar to Freya, only to learn that it's her younger twin brother.
No shit.
With this group of 3 people on our side, we delved deeper into the jungle until we arrived at what I unironically think is one of the harder bosses in the game, the Forest Ancient.
Okay, I concede I must be the only person getting my shit absolutely rolled by this one fucking ancient, but am I doing something wrong here?
Now, I know most people watching this will be scratching their heads and wondering how this random fucking enemy could pose any danger whatsoever, but but I've got to be honest, dealing with this guy's lasers while constantly being jumped by these somersaulting cocksuckers was one of the hardest things I've had to do in either of these games. If I wasn't being eviscerated by this guy's beam attack, I was getting pounced on by these overleveled freak shows who seemed to have unlimited range. I can't even remember how I managed to overcome this fight. I probably just got lucky because I remember ripping my hair out over this shit. Out of every region we've explored so far, Vanaheim was by far the hardest. The place just seemed to be filled with random ass beasts that could just fuck you up at a moment's notice. Bro, what the fuck am I even fighting, like seriously? Thankfully, it was also in this very region where I first discovered skill mods. These are unlockable after using a certain skill a set number of times, and add bonus effects based on what you're looking for. We'll be needing as many of these upgrades as we can get, seeing as I was seemingly dying from my own ground slams.
Holy shit, I'm just getting fisted every fight now.
Fiskake fucked me up a good few times, but he wasn't even the main boss of the chapter as we awaken Nidhogg from his slumber. Missing a single parry window will almost always get you killed when fighting this guy, which wasn't great considering I really struggled with his attack timings. His second phase was even more confusing as he just wouldn't stay still. Alas, we did manage to pack him up within a few more attempts, and just like that, Freya was free to walk any realm she wanted. Considering we solo carried her to her freedom, she pretends like she could ever beat us and spares our lives. In the wake of Nidhogg, we picked up an amulet which we're able to fill with unique enchantments. For now, these are all locked away, but we'll be unlocking more slots soon enough. Despite Freya being free, we didn't want to leave Vanaheim just yet as there was still plenty left to do. See, Freya here comes equipped with hex arrows, which we can use to chain our elemental powers across terrain, allowing us to burn or freeze objects that we can't usually reach. This opens up a lot of opportunities for good loot, as these jungles are full of weeds and plants standing in our way. What it doesn't exactly help with, however, is getting one shot by rift enemies that we can't even see. I can't be bothered, man, I just can't. Most of our time in this realm saw us talking to dead spirits and completing their favors. Although looking back at it, I'm not sure how many of them were actually worth it.
What's that?
The rest of our time essentially came down to getting fried by more elementals or being blasted to smithereens by regular ass enemies. To say I was having a bad time would be an understatement, although can you really blame me when seemingly every corner has some lame ass sucker punch waiting for us. Holy fuck, bro, I'm almost dead. What the fuck? You know what the reward for all of this was in the end? Freya pulling out her own master sword. So in other words, fuck all for us. Joking aside, this sword from my knowledge is the best one Freya can equip as it inflicts Bifrost on our enemies, leading to a significant damage increase overall. Any hopes of a relaxing boat trip back, however, were quickly squashed as we are jumped by another Dreki, or at least I had hoped it was one. Why is there two of them? Dreki on their own aren't exactly that challenging, but when you've got to watch out for electrified projectiles, it does make things slightly more tense. Either way, we managed to take them out, only to return home and assume the unsupportive parent role once again.
Answer me! Did you go to Asgard?
No! Of course not!
Stop the cap!
This unfortunately has the downsides of pushing us into another Atreus section, and you won't believe what this idiot intends to do this time.
Couldn't I just climb over it?
This is great banter!
Now, surprisingly enough, the climb up Asgard's walls was fairly straightforward. The enemies that stand in our way throughout the climb all die within a single hit, and the climb itself essentially stems down to holding the trigger upwards. Upon reaching the top, we're grabbed by a stranger that has arguably the coolest eyes in the entire franchise. The only downside to this guy was that he was a bit too sarcastic for our pubescent liking.
Really? I truly cannot wait for you to regale me with the revisionist tales of Asgard's architectural history.
He's also impossible to hit, embarrassing us to the point where other Aesir gods had to step in to save us. It's here where we see Odin's loose personality for the first time, and you've got to admit, enemy or not, he's quite funny.
Heimdall, will you just relax? Were you intending on killing me first thing? See? What, that's not good enough for you?
Alas, I'm not sure any amount of funny would convince me to follow him into his own headquarters, but Atreus' IQ definitely sits within the single digits, so that's exactly what we did. Following a few upgrades, we meet with Odin in his office before being gifted Ingrid, our new companion. Afterwards, we learn of Odin's obsession with a particular mask, one said to provide him with 20/20 vision once again, and considering the state of his right eye, I can't blame him for wanting it restored. The first piece takes us back to Muspelheim, although this time we're joined by Thor, who sounds as though he wants to be anywhere but here.
Where are we going?
What the fuck am I supposed to know?
The perks of working with the God of War though sees us breezing through most of the fights as he pretty much clears out half the enemies himself. He's so impactful in fact that the only time I died here was the section where he left us to clear out the enemies ourselves. Eventually we found the mask piece, returned to Odin and participated in a cold transition back to Kratos. Refusing to accept the fact that our very own son is a complete dumbass, we looked to seek out the Norse, as they would be able to confirm without a doubt whether or not our main character status was in jeopardy. Finding them proved to be its own challenge however, as these Norn figures loved baiting the fuck out of us. Seeing as we were back in Midgard, we also took the time to explore the surrounding areas of the Lake of Nine. This saw us getting packed in by another hateful, finding half a key that leads to Sigrun's hidden treasure trove and clearing out some bandit camps. Or at least trying to. Focusing back on our main objective, reaching the Norn saw us taking out our first phantom before being humbled by our very own delusions. What am I even supposed to fucking do here? I'm getting constantly jumped. The Mimir tree illusion in particular was so goddamn difficult, which is ironic as you don't even need to defeat any enemies. This whole segment is time gated, meaning all we really need to do is survive. A task that I was complete dog shit at. Fuck's sake! Oh, this is such a fucking— oh my— it's like a whole gangbang and we're like the fucking main centerpiece. There were just so many fucking enemies, so many projectiles, so many things to keep track of that I truly thought I wouldn't be able to progress here. It didn't help that the following illusion was just as AIDS, as we're bum rushed by countless enemies that we actually have to defeat this time, all of which inflict Bifrost with their attacks. This whole section was a complete beatdown and our death counter was the main victim in all of it. You can bet your sweet ass I was jumping with joy the moment I cleared it all, and after one last horse ride, we were in the presence of the Norns. These Foresight Masters predicted that we'd die at least another 50 times before the end of the game, and looking to prove them wrong, we rushed back to Midgard where we immediately proved them right. It seems the only way to keep our main character status is by becoming a god killer once again. The problem then becomes, which god should we kill and how exactly are we going to go about it? The most obvious ones were the big shots Thor and Odin, but reaching Asgard in our current state was essentially impossible. In the meantime, we overhear Sindri and Brock talking about a legendary ring said to be the mortal enemy of anyone with ADHD. The idea here was to give this ring to the Lady of the Forge, as she was said to have the ability to craft a weapon fit for a god. This meant returning to Svartalheim, although the stop we were dropped off at looked like the local winery cellar. It also didn't help that these tight halls were filled with countless enemies, as it made traversing the area quite difficult. Having escaped the cellars, we found ourselves back outside dealing with the same enemies we've been fighting all game. Defeating them cleared the path to this lift, which we had to free by destroying a nightmarish buildup of, well, nightmares. This lift took us up to the forge where we met with the lady. Using her voodoo magic, she's able to combine Dropnir with this spearhead, and after giving her a taste of our blood, she's able to imbue it so that no one else may use it. On the way back up, we asked Brock to bless our weapon, only for him to go and spit on it instead. Bro, what the fuck? With the spit making it hard to properly grip our new spear, it was to be expected that I'd die in our first encounter using it. I can't lie, I hated this fucking spear at first. Every fight with it felt agonizingly hard for whatever reason, but as we'll come to see, it quickly became my go-to weapon in the latter parts of the game. Returning from the forge, we paid a surprise visit from Odin himself, who thought his little insults about godhood would get under our skin.
In your lifetimes, has anyone ever worshipped you?
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
In reality, we had far more pressing matters to attend to, namely summoning the first of many Berserker souls which we'll need to defeat. These enemies are pretty much the Valkyries of Ragnarok, as we'll come to encounter many more throughout our journey. In terms of difficulty though, I'd say on average they're harder than the Valkyries. Hard Refill in particular was quite devastating with his attacks, and while they were easy enough to avoid, we couldn't afford to make any mistakes as this guy would two-shot us. It definitely took a few attempts to learn the parry timing on some of these attacks, but once we did, he wasn't too much of a roadblock. As we had done in Alfheim, we decided to stay in Svartalheim for a bit longer, helping lost spirits and dealing with whatever the fuck this thing was. Man, they really just be turning anything into bosses now. They just see a regular enemy, they slap a fucking boss health bar on it, and all of a sudden this thing one-hits us. This small detour led to us obtaining some upgrade materials for Freya's sword, as well as the seed fragment needed to reach a separate area in Muspelheim. We were also humbled by another berserker whose purple health bar signaled to me that we weren't supposed to be dealing with him just yet. Yeah, let's come back to this guy. Returning home, we're treated to some fan service as well as another sweet transition back to Atreus. It seems like Odin here is going through a midlife crisis and his only solace seems to revolve around this mask. As such, we're once again tasked with finding the final piece, which sees us returning to Helheim. Instead of Thor though, we're joined by his daughter Thrud, who isn't as overpowered but is still appreciated for her ability to lock up our enemies. What wasn't appreciated however was her absolutely mogging us when it came to strength.
Let me get that for you.
With our self-confidence at an all-time low, we knew we had to do something to impress, and fortunately for us, we had the chance to save this poor wolf. Unbeknownst to us at the time, but this here was Garm, a being so powerful that he quite literally had the ability to rip realms a new asshole. With the fuck up of a lifetime now haunting us, we did what everyone else would do in this situation. We ran back to our parents and hoped to hell they could somehow fix it. Fortunately for Atreus, his father is bloody Kratos, meaning there was always going to be a fix for this clusterfuck of a mistake. What's the fix, you may ask? How about just killing the goddamn As I was saying, all we really needed to do was just kill. I can't lie, out of every boss we've faced so far, these have to be the most embarrassing deaths I've experienced. Garm is not a hard boss fight in the slightest. His attacks are slow and extremely predictable, yet for whatever reason, I was just sucking some major fucking 10-inch dick. Holy fuck, dude, how do I let myself get hit there? I'm playing so fucking shit. With 3 of the worst deaths ever imaginable added to the death counter, we finally managed to choke this gargantuan wolf to death. Or at least we thought so.
Oh shit, here we go again.
Our second encounter with Garm is more of a gimmick fight than anything else. All we need to do is stagger him to the point where he topples over, as this will allow us to chain him down, giving Atreus just enough time to impart Fenrir's soul into the corporeal beast. With a realm-tearing beast on our side, the odds of Odin's cheeks being clapped were on the rise. And considering we'd tamed Garm, we looked to yet another beast in the hopes of garnering some eggs for breakfast. So you got any eggs we can turn into like scrambled eggs or fried eggs or something? Guess not. With no eggs to speak of, we return home disappointed in the hopes of sharing our knowledge of the mask with our raid group. One thing led to another, and before we knew it, we were back in Vanaheim, helping Freya locate our brother, who had been captured by Odin's forces. The large majority of the enemies we encountered at this point in the game were merely stepping stones, something the developers knew all too well as they paired every single one of them up with their own guardian angel. These little demons will constantly buff and heal the enemies they're attached to, making every encounter more awkward as we kind of need to skip past the main threats and rail the little bloke in the background. The only other roadblock appeared in the form of these tamers who call in their own fucking mounts to fight alongside us. Holy fuck, how am I dying so goddamn fast? These things do so much fucking damage. Before long, we'd met up with Skull and Hearty, the legendary wolves said to have the power to devour the sun, plunging the realm into eternal nightlife. Knowing full well we're no longer at the age where we can freely party, we request for a way to call them at any moment, resulting in them giving us a lint roller. You fucking serious? A lint roller was the last thing we wanted, however, as every fight following this interaction felt like a prime Mike Tyson's punch to the nuts. I have no idea why this random encounter against a captain was this goddamn hard, but I was getting destroyed again and again. Not only do all 3 of these enemies come with elemental health bars, meaning we had to constantly switch between our weapons, they also never let up on their attacks, constantly breaking our guard and punishing us with insane damage or Bifrost. I felt more accomplished clearing out this random fucking room than most of the boss fights we've encountered so far. That's how much I struggled here. Speaking of bosses, soon after this we come face to face with Heimdall himself, and despite all that waffle about forging our own path, we knew this motherfucker had to die. This first saw us annihilating his mount, which was easy enough, and while I expected the fight against Heimdall himself to be rather tough, one pop of his eardrums and this guy completely crumbles into an idiot who spams the same 3 attacks over and over again. In fact, his slow motion gimmick actually makes it easier to dodge his attacks as we see them coming from a mile away. His second phase essentially follows a complete breakdown as he just becomes completely erratic and throws punch after punch after punch. Again though, outside of a single death, this phase isn't exactly the hardest either. Awkwardly enough, the following arena fight gave me more trouble than Heimdall ever did. Unfortunately, our rescue of Frasier doesn't come without cost, as we lose Massive Swordman in the process, or at least that's what we thought. In reality, he seems to have survived the fall, somehow, and after taking the strange boat back to the crater of Vanaheim, we were in the prime position to rescue him. This dragon was a right arsehole as he blocked the path to Berger, constantly raining down fire blasts on our bald head anytime we got close. Would you just fucking piss off, man? Since we didn't really know how to deal with such a beast just yet, we took some detours which led us to a strange warrior that almost immediately railed us. Despite him having a boss health bar, this was just another traveler in disguise, and after learning his slightly altered attack patterns, we were able to deal with him as we've done with the rest. Venturing further into the crater saw us encountering the Untamed Fury, and while its purple health bar caused concerns early on, we didn't need to defeat it here and now. The more we explored, the more clear it became that this was an area geared towards later game exploration. Holy fuck, okay, he just does so much damage. It felt like every other area had some massive boss waiting for us, and these guys didn't fuck around with their damage either. I must have died to Cragjaw a handful of times before realizing that we could just block the large majority of his attacks. This Drake guarded the entrance to the Wishing Well, and while it wasn't exactly useful at this current point, we'll be returning to it later for some rather valuable resources. Now, considering the beating our death counter had just received, we decided to call it quits for now and returned back to Sindri's. It's here where we came to a bit of a crossroads. With another god dead, it became clear to us that Odin wouldn't sit still, and in an attempt to appease him first, Atreus decided to return to Asgard and complete what he started. The only problem with this plan was the fact that we had to get Thor on our side, and despite our best efforts, all this led to was a classic pub brawl. Thankfully, we had his daughter with us, and after a right grilling, he finally agreed to accompany us to Niflheim. Like the large majority of Atreus' sections, this one too was a cakewalk in comparison, as we linked up with Thor quite well, trauma bonding almost as we annihilated the enemies in front of us. Before long, we'd found the last mask piece, survived a life-threatening attack, and watched in horror as the man we thought to be Tyr turned out to be Odin all along, in what may be one of the greatest plot twists a game has ever concocted.
Never shut up!
Of all the things, Odin. Let go of the boy and face me!
With Brock's light snuffed out and Ragnarok on the horizon, we needed something to keep us distracted. And what better than another fight against a berserker? Well, it would have been a lot cooler if I'd actually, won. All joking aside, this berserker is probably the weakest of the whole bunch, highlighted by the fact that he only has like 2 attacks, all of which are easily parryable. Following this, we stopped by Sigrun's treasury only to find a traveler waiting to get cut in half. With minimal time to grieve, we had no choice but to return home, where our party was devising a strategy to build up an army of our own. Our part in all of this saw us returning to Muspelheim, trying to deal with 2 Soul Eaters at the same time, and convincing the first fire giant to ever exist to turn into a massive ass monster, destroy Asgard and perish as a result. As you'd expect, this guy wanted no part of our plan, meaning we had no other choice but to stab him in the heart. With our fiery monster cooked to perfection, we're ambushed by a set of Valkyries sent by Odin. What he hadn't realized, however, was the fact that we died over 50 times fighting these enemies a couple of years ago, and considering how similar their attack patterns were, this might have been the easiest duo fight we've ever conquered. If there's one thing you can't do on this difficulty, however, it's get too cocky. Wait, what? Oh my, are you fucking kidding me? I walk around the corner and get fucking one hit. With our armies now gathered and ready, all we needed before the Great War was some much needed rest, a requirement that we weren't going to get based on the state of our sleeping quarters.
What's that?
Upon waking, it was finally time to unite all the realms against Asgard and begin our siege on the Aesir stronghold. Worryingly, it seems the fire giant we'd struck a contract with was running late, meaning it was up to us to fight our way towards the defensive cannons and annihilate them for good. This was easier said than done, however, as these battlefields were filled to the brim with enemies and tough opponents that could instantly one-shot us. Upon reaching Svartalheim's tower, we learned that Sindri couldn't recruit the rest of the dwarfs because he had absolutely no charisma. Thankfully, it seemed as though Sindri was all we needed, as one swing of his hammer brought about the destruction of every innocent civilian outside these walls. From here, we abused the shit out of the cliffsides only to get interrupted by Thor. Something about his demeanor, however, told me that he wasn't going to hold back this time around, and boy was I right. With that said, Thor wasn't that hard of a fight. He's definitely switched up his arsenal of attacks since the last time we fought him, but none of them are truly that hard to avoid, and he gives you plenty of cues as to when he's about to use them. The fight ends with us of all people giving Thor a pep talk about fatherhood, although this advice would land on deaf ears. Literally. Thus begins the climactic battle against Odin, and I've got to say, I'm rather disappointed. As you'd expect, Odin here uses plenty of Bifrost attacks. It's just a shame that hardly any of them ever hit us, because they're so goddamn easy to avoid. This carries on over into a second phase where he starts using more unblockable attacks, all of which were avoided with ease. He's not even that tanky, which honestly makes sense considering his frail body. Although considering all the insults and the pain in his voice throughout the fight, I don't know, I guess I just expected a bit more oomph from my final boss. Following his defeat, Atreus sucks his soul into this marble, and despite the manipulation and the pain he put everyone through, no one seems to have the balls to destroy him. No one apart from one. At the end of it all, Atreus decides he's got his own problems to sort out, while we're granted a prophecy we've so desperately wanted. Slaves bowing down to us. Now, just because Odin's cheeks are dust doesn't mean we're done with this playthrough just yet. As I stated before, I wanted to beat the game's toughest bosses on the hardest difficulty, meaning we had some more berserkers to hunt. One thing to note is that we're joined by Freya during the endgame, meaning we have her overpowered Bifrost attacks at our disposal. Another thing to mention is the fact that Asgard, while destroyed, left a small gift in the form of these Aesir wreckage sites. The only problem is that we're far too weak to take certain ones on. Holy fuck, wait, red health bars? I don't think I've ever seen a fucking red health bar. What we aren't too weak for though, are these measly berserker fights. Wait, why are there 3 health bars? Ah, fuck. Of course, the first gravestone we stumble across is one of the hardest berserker fights the game has to offer. See, one berserker is tough enough, but when paired with 2 others that constantly attack from all sides, it makes managing them a complete nightmare. Who the fuck am I even supposed to attack here? Are you fucking kidding me? I tried every strategy under the moon, whether it was keeping my distance, focusing on the sisters first, or just playing it slow. Nothing seemed to be working, and our asses were getting fisted like never before. After a half dozen attempts or so, I noticed a pattern where after the main guy does his attacks, one of the 2 sisters will cycle some attacks before it returns to the main guy again. Even with this knowledge, we'd have to play almost perfectly while trying to keep each and every one of them in our sights, as one misstep meant death. Oh, for fuck's sake, man. I thought she'd already used her attack. This was without a doubt the hardest boss fight we'd encountered yet, and even when I completed it, I didn't feel any joy. I just felt relief. Now, granted, I was most definitely underleveled for this fight, given the color of their health bars, and considering how long this shit actually took me, I thought it best we powered up some of our gear before looking to fight the others. Due to the number of side quests we'd completed at this point though, our armor was fairly easy to upgrade, given the amount of resources we'd managed to build up. The main problem was with our weapons, which by this point were still at a measly level 6. The first weapon we focused on were the Blades of Chaos. To get the required Chaos Flames, we had to travel back to Muspelheim to complete the trials waiting for us. Given our level at this point, the earlier trials were a complete cakewalk, and while I expected the harder ones to put up more of a challenge, even these weren't nearly as bad as their counterparts in 2018. The only one I really struggled with was killing enemies while the safe space moved around. Towards the end, you're kind of rushed by countless Draugr enemies, most of which can legitimately 2-hit you, and considering they blend into the terrain, it's hard to spot them sometimes. Completing these trials got our blades to level 7, meaning it was time to return to the Vanaheim crater, where we did a whole fuck ton of stuff, like kill a dragon, kill a flame phantom, and kill, well, another dragon. Ironically enough though, the toughest boss out of everyone here was another goddamn Hateful, who even now was a complete nuisance to fight. Oh, how do I still instantly die to these guys? They're actually fucking hard. These dragons both dropped the unique materials required to upgrade our other weapons, which was a nice boost as we were about to take on another berserker. This guy has the ability to coat himself in elemental armor, meaning we were forced to switch between our weapons throughout the fight. Even so, he doesn't really bring any new attacks to the table, and after a death or two, we were able to take him out. Following his defeat, we leveled the rest of our armor to level 9 and got to work finding the last few ingredients to push our weapons to the same level. Before finding any, however, we came across the Bolt, who despite his green health bar, made things rather difficult with his minion spawns. Alas, his squishy health bar didn't mean that we could deal with him in due time. The Feared was next, who used his lightning abilities to keep us moving. The moment you stop moving, you're pretty much dead. Our high tier gear however carried us through this fight as well, as we were able to dislodge his head from his body on our second attempt. The only other hard berserker fight was the duo one, as similarly to the trio fight, we had to split our focus between them as they'd take turns attacking us. With that said, as long as both of them were in our sights, it wasn't necessarily that hard to parry their attacks or avoid them. These two dropped the last Gale Flame we needed, meaning we could level our spear to level 9, and using it we made short work of yet another berserker. From here we looked to close the last of their hateful Draugr holes, and as terrifying as these enemies have been so far, we had somehow left the easiest one for last. Leveling our blades to level 9 took our total power level to the high 8s, giving me enough confidence to take on the final berserker. Holy fuck, wait, what? Bro like punched through my soul. Yeah, so high tier weapons weren't going to save us from this guy's ability to immediately coat our entire health bar in Bifrost. You can't even really block this guy's attacks as he still inflicts Bifrost damage on you, meaning should you get hit even once, you're fucking cooked. These attacks paired with his quick movements made him quite the challenge, and it definitely took us a few attempts to beat him. Alas, with the last of the berserkers defeated, we could now challenge their king, who much like Sigrund is an absolute slug of a fight where one mistimed dodge or block can lead to an instant death. That's really the hardest part of this entire fight, playing perfectly for minutes on end, knowing that you can't really screw up otherwise your whole attempt could be toast. With that said, he doesn't have any attacks that we haven't seen before. Sure, he'll switch up the elements of them, but fighting the other berserkers has given us all the knowledge we need to avoid or parry each of these attacks. It took a good few attempts for sure, but his predictable movements and slowish attacks didn't pose nearly as much challenge as Sigrun did back in 2018. The developers, probably knowing this exact fact, thought it'd be a cool idea to add one final hidden boss into the game, one that could definitely rival Sigrun, as she's her direct replacement. This here is Gnar, Odin's replacement Valkyrie Queen, and before anyone thinks she's not a worthy substitute, this here was my very first attempt.
Nasty hit! You alright, brother?
Fuck me. Look at how much damage I fucking did to her. Are you kidding me? I did 1 speck of damage. Being that she's a Valkyrie, Gnar has a few moves that we've seen before. With that said, she also has a ton of moves we've never seen, most of which will instantly kill us. Some of her moves even change throughout the fight, making her attacks extremely unpredictable. Wait, are you fucking kidding me? Wait, she fucking delays her landing now, that's bullshit. One moment I think I'm reading her attacks, and the next I'm looking at the fucking death screen. Oh, for fuck's sake, why did I just, I should've just blocked. Why didn't I block? It honestly took everything I had to beat her. Whether this was constant weapon swapping to use our runic attacks or last minute rage burst to mitigate an attack that I wasn't going to be able to dodge in time, everything felt as though it had to go perfectly if we would have any chance of defeating her. We had to swallow the rage that was building up with every death and lock in like we'd never done so before, and only then were we able to bring her down and restore Freya to her rightful position as the true Valkyrie Queen. The defeat of Gnar marks the end of our journey in Ragnarok, and after seeing Brock off at his funeral, we're able to compare these two games to see which one's truly the hardest to complete on Give Me God of War difficulty. Whereas I perished a total of 158 times on God of War 2018, Ragnarok wasn't as brutal, at least throughout its main story, as I only died 137 times, most of which came from the endgame bosses. With this, I can definitely say that God of War 2018 is the hardest Norse God of War game, although it's far from the hardest God of War game in general. If you haven't seen my video where I tackled the Greek saga, feel free to go watch that, as I still believe them to be harder than these games right here. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please do drop a like and subscribe. If you want to support me further, do check out my memberships, and for the rest of you, I'll be seeing you all in the next one.